So here we are back for another one of my time-lapse model build videos. This one will be covering the build of a Tamiya 148 scale Mosquito, specifically this one here, the Fighter Bomber Mark VI or the Night Fighter Mark II. It's Tamiya, it's 148, it falls together. This has kind of been my sanity build out of the 4 kits I'm currently working on. It's the easiest to go together, and I've built one before, so I kind of know what to expect. But it's turning out really, really nicely. So you'll see this. If you want to see a full review of this kit, I'll put a link up above. I did do a review, like an in-box review of this kit, so you can see kind of what you get in this boxing. And as you're watching the video, if you have any questions or anything on what I'm doing or why I'm doing things a certain way, by all means, down below, leave a comment. I'm more than happy to answer any questions for anything I am doing. This is part 1, so it's going to cover everything up to the point that this aircraft is primed and ready for paint. Everything from that point on, painting, decaling, weathering, the final assembly, that will all be in part 2. And it's probably going to be a few months after this video releases before part 2 releases. However, depending on when you're watching this, if part 2 has released already, down below in the description, I'll put a link to part 2 so you guys can just hop over there and take a look at that whenever you feel comfortable doing so. Anyways, on that note, let's jump right into this. We'll take a look at the building up to the point of primer of this de Havilland Mosquito Fighter Bomber Mark VI or Night Fighter Mark II, depending on how you want to build it. Let's jump into this. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. And as usual with these aircraft models, I do start construction in the cockpit. The Mosquito being the type of airframe it is, you'll see that the whole cockpit is kind of one big assembly that includes everything. The cockpit, the bomb bay, the wing spars. The bomber version has the bomb aimers area all in one kind of compact little unit. So I get all that assembled, and then I go ahead and get it all painted, the usual RAF interior green, and then the weathering and the black wash and all that other stuff before I get everything buttoned up. Okay, confession time. I've already screwed this up. So, lesson learned on me. Lesson learned for any of you out there who are currently working on this kit. Don't make the mistake I just made. So honestly, it's a bit of an easy mistake to make. Obviously, like you see here, it shows you how to drill holes based off the version you build. Unfortunately, I missed here in step 10. There's a point here where it says to drill, and I just never noticed it when I glued these spars onto the kind of Bombay section of the kit. Completely missed that note right there about drilling holes. And now that I've glued the spar pieces onto the kit, I can't get to it. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you guys get a good look at what it looks like. So sorry for the camera shake. Right down here, there's this little slot, and it's on this upper frame piece on the top of the Bombay. And if you were to come down and drill from the top down through that hole, you put a hole out in the bottom. And that hole is where this gun piece is supposed to slide into. Now, I've already glued this piece on, so I can't access that slot. And I've kind of tried to see if I could drill from the top down, but there's no way to get it lined up. So I'm going to have to just blindly glue this on and hope it lines up. So we're at a point now where I can start thinking about paint. And I'm gonna go ahead and prep everything to paint. The interior, I have everything I need basically done. Yeah, I've gone through the instructions already. I did it off camera. There's no need for you to see a video of me just staring at instructions for a few minutes. But I went through the instructions. I made sure that everything that needed to be painted interior green, I have taken off the sprue or pre-assembled to whatever extent possible. Hence why I am now ready to think about paint. So I got to get all of these little bits and bobs ready to go. Now it doesn't say to paint the inside of the nose, but I'm going to, because, and I'll quickly, I guess I can't really quickly assemble it. Anyways, when you get the fuselage assembled, and you get the nose glued in, I believe it goes this way, you have the ability to pull that front cover off and see the interior of the gun bay. And I don't think it's necessarily supposed to be part of the kit because the inside of the nose is not really detailed well enough to be able to see much, but it doesn't look realistic, let's put it that way. But I'm going to go ahead and paint the inside of that nose, just like I am going to also paint the inside of the cover, even though again there's no detail. There's giant sink marks and ejector pin marks and stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and paint them interior green just so that there is something to look at and it's not completely devoid of any detail. So I'm just going to polish this. It's a very quick way to break parts. Anyways, I'm just giving the inside a quick polish. Sand off some of those ejector pin markings. Clean up the worst of the scratches I just made with the sandpaper. Better than nothing. My plan, I'm never going to have it up. I'm always going to display it, if I do, sitting beside the nose, but you're going to want that inside painted just enough that you're not going to see the gray. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're just trying to hide the plastic. So it's ready. Get all of these little bits and pieces in the clips, and then I can go ahead and shoot a coat of RAF interior green onto these. And then with all the other kits going on, I'm gonna make sure my other kits are at the same point, and then I can start painting. Well, I guess I'll have to paint some black pieces, all the things like the control, the control sticks and throttle quadrants and all that other stuff will also need to be painted black. So get this interior green. I have another one that's gonna be painted interior green. Then I have two that needs the US interior green. And then I can look at starting to airbrush some of the black bits. And then from there, I can go through and start picking this out by hand and get all the little details painted by hand. And then weather and yada, yada, yada. But we're at paint, and that's awesome. So stay tuned. We'll get some more work done on these. So here I'm applying all of the kind of detail decals that go in the cockpit, instrument panel, seat belts. There's some little markings on the inside of the crew door. So all those get added. It's just standard decal process. And if you do want to see my tips and tricks video on how to do decals, link will be above. You can take a look there and see how I do it. And here I am, I'm gluing the wings together, get ready to, luckily there's not much with the wings other than getting the radiators and those little underwing lights in place. The wings can be glued together relatively early in the build process and not affect any of the long-term buildability of the kit. So I get those assembled, and then I go ahead and start getting the fuselage glued together. And again, I kind of work my way around, start at one end, add a bit of liquid glue, slowly work my way around the fuselage, doing it in little tiny stages to ensure there aren't any significant gaps or steps in the kit, and I work each little bit as I go, and then I'll go ahead and start cleaning up some of those seams. There's not much of the Tamiya kit, but a little bit of sanding and puttying is required here and there just to clean up the little gaps that show up. And here I start masking off the cockpit. I'm not using any Tamiya, Edward pre-cut masks. I am just using the Tamiya tape and making my own. I got a tips and tricks video on this as well. If you want to just click the link there above, you can take a quick look at a deep dive on how I do my masking. Depending on the type of kit this system works, if you've got nice crisp molding lines, it's really easy to do this. If you've got softer molds, it's a little more difficult to get a straight line and follow the edges. So, you know, there are some other little things you can do, or just buy the pre-cut masking, and then that just solves all the problems. But anyways, I get this mask. Luckily, not a lot of glazing on the Mosquito, but I get it masked and then I get ready to start priming. Now, they're just the tiniest of gaps that are between the wings and the fuselage, as well as some of the panels along the underside near the nose and whatnot on this that I use a little bit of Mr. Surfacer to clean up. So that just gets applied with a brush, and then I use some thinner here on a Q-tip, and I just go through and wipe it down. And then there's very little to no sanding required to do that. Now, you do have to be careful with these gaps because the Mosquito wing was built as a solid wing from tip to tip, one unit, and the fuselage was lowered over the wing. So there really wouldn't be any gaps per se around the wing. So again, just it's Tamiya. So not a lot of work, but a little bit of work is needed to clean it up. Okay, quick mid-build update here on the Mosquito. I did a little bit of the Mr. Surfacer through all of the seams in here, the ones that are really hard to sand, and they turned out really nicely. Same thing in through here around the Bombay, and this seam in here and up and around here. The vast majority of those seams got filled. There's a few here that are still there, which I can do with another round of Mr. Surfacer. But for the most part, that cleaned it up quite nicely. I also have a little bit more I need to do in here with Mr. Surfacer. Sorry about that. But yeah, a little bit Mr. Surfacer here and a little bit in through here, so it's almost done. I also got the nacelles assembled. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh my God, I hate when you have a sneeze and it feels like it's gonna come out and it doesn't come out at all. Anyways, nacelles are assembled. I need to do a little bit of sanding, which when I got to clean up the seams on here, which I'll do that when I do the Mr. Surfacer here. And I want to do a little bit of sanding in through here. But yeah, we're definitely in a very, very good spot with this. So it's just a little bit of Mr. Surfacer, clean up those nacelles. I got to weather the inside of the nacelles. Yeah, I can just go through here and start cleaning up some of these seams or some of these panel lines that get destroyed when you sand the seams. But yeah, I just got to go through the nacelles, clean these up, these seams here, sand all this out. A little bit of sanding in here, a little bit more Mr. Surfacer, including probably when I get these nacelles installed. I'll do a little bit more Mr. Surfacer because I want to do some, probably going to require some Mr. Surfacer in this seam here on both sides. Yeah, a little bit's going to be required in there. As well as the seam up here on the front. I'll probably need a little bit inside here. So I'll deal with all of that all at the same time. But again, we're very close to primer on this. Once these nacelles are installed, oh, and I got to weather the inside of the wheel. The inside of the nacelles still needs some weathering. I haven't done that yet. But once I get these nacelles installed and that last of that Mr. Surfacer done, all that's really left to do is wingtips, horizontal stabs. I think that's it. A bit of masking, wheel wells, Bombay, this opening here, the insides of the radiator housings, and then it's ready for a coat of primer and see where we are. So yeah, we're moving right along, looking good, very close to paint. So let's keep going. We'll get these nacelles cleaned up, finished up, weathered and installed. And now I start getting the wingtips prepared. These wingtips, again, it's dependent on which version you make, but this particular Night Fighter version I'm building, there are antennas that slide through the wingtip and stick up on the upper and lower surfaces, so you have to drill those out. So again, this is where watching those instructions and being diligent when you do that pay off, and you don't miss it like I did with the gun rack in the belly. So anyways, go ahead, I get those holes drilled out, get them all cleaned up, and then I get the wingtips glued together and then glued onto the wing, and final little prep and cleanup. And one of the last things I do before I hit it with primer is I just have to mask off all of these openings, the wheel wells, the band bay, the tail wheel, the crew opening. I'm just using the tried and tested mode or way that I've learned over the years, and it's just kind of mask the peripheral, the edges of it, so it sticks up a little bit and then forms like a little dam, and then just jam Kleenex in there. And I find you can use, especially in areas that don't have a lot of like small fiddly details, you can just jam the Kleenex in there and it fills up the gaps, and you can go ahead and do it. If there are any fine details, there's other things you can do. You can make sponge masks. You can just be gentle with the Kleenex. You can mask it off completely. There's a couple of different ways you can do this, but it depends again on the size of the opening and what kind of detail is in there. But this works well with just the Kleenex and masking tape, and I'm pretty much ready for primer after that. So here we are at that stage where we can wrap up part one. This video will be wrapped up at this point. The build is ready for paint. So here is what it looks like right now. So if you've been following along, you've seen the progress, you'll see where I've ended up. These Tamiya kits are an absolute joy to build. As I'm sure you've seen, there's not been a lot of work. I've had a little bit of cleanup in here where some of these pieces all meet together. The cowlings needed a little bit of work, especially here around these carb intakes, and a little bit on the back, the top of the wing where the cowling meets the upper surface of the wing. Other than that, just a little bit of Mr. Surfacer to seal everything up in some of these corners, and the rest of it just falls together. These things are unbelievable to build. I'm so happy that Tamiya has stepped up their game really with this level, and this is kind of that brought on the next round of kit developers that have just made these kits so fun to build. So yeah, this is pretty much ready for paint. It's going to be the Night Fighter, so I'm going to be painting it black. The next video, part 2, which whenever it is ready, down below in the description, I'll have a link to it. If you see the description, you can jump to part 2 when you're finished this. If not, then part 2 will come out sooner rather than later. But yeah, so in part 2, I'm going to start effectively with pre-shading. I'm not going to paint it like actual black. I'm probably going to use Panzer dark gray, the dark German gray. That just gives it a little bit of a scale effect. So if I pre-shade with black and then I hit it with the dark Panzer gray, it'll still look black, but it will look like weathered black. And then when you do things like, you know, the tires and the props that are actually black, it will look better than just having all flat black. And then I do the exhaust staining and all that kind of stuff. So there's still quite a bit. So pre-shading, paint everything black. Then I got to go through and, like I said, do the weathering, the exhaust staining. And then I'll have to pull all the masking off, pull all this out, go through and just do some spot hits, just dirty it up a little bit. Some of the smoke trails from the guns, touch up the guns. I got to paint them flat black again, and then do all of the little fiddly bits to go together. So we're getting there. It looks really good. I'm very happy with it. So we're gonna wrap this video up here. Part 1 is done. As I said, jump over to part 2 if it is released, if you would like to see the second half of the building of this kit. So on that point, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you soon on the next one.